Welcome to Marketing Today. I'm your host, Alan Hart, managing partner of Atomic, combining brand science and creative fire. Today on the show, I have Drew Miller, founder and CEO of Rollcast Advisors, based in Austin, Texas. Rollcast is a marketing strategy consultancy focused on helping high-growth B2B companies create and implement their first marketing strategy, build their marketing department, and deliver tangible bottom-line results. Prior to Rollcast, Drew spent 15 years at Dell. He also spent 4 years in the Army as an infantry officer, attended University of Virginia for his undergraduate studies, got his MBA at UNC Keenan-Flagler's Business School. Drew's on this show today to share when and how fast-growth B2B firms should get started with marketing. Drew, welcome to the show. Tell me a little bit about Rollcast Advisors. I know it's not your typical marketing consultancy.
Yeah. Hey, Alan, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate the chance to catch up with you and share a little bit about Rollcast and my perspective on marketing in general. But yeah, I started Rollcast last year with a focus on helping small, usually early stage, but high growth B2B companies create their first marketing strategy and turn that strategy into an execution plan, and then get a marketing team hired and activated and start delivering results for the business and set them up to have a great marketing competency long term.
How does a fast growth B2B company determine whether they're ready for marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and if you think about it in contrast to a B2C company, where in the very earliest stages of life for a consumer oriented company, you've got to have a fairly robust marketing presence just to get the word out and let your target audience know that you exist. In B2B, you can typically go longer without a heavy focus on a full marketing department. Having said that, there are some elements of marketing mix which make sense to go after right away, early on in the life of a B2B company. But those are going to tend to be more around making sure your value proposition is tight, making sure it's articulated in messaging that'll really resonate with your target customers. But from there, you're largely going to have your sales force carry that message to your first set of customers. But once you start to hit some critical mass on your base of initial customers, the size of your sales team, and you get some momentum going on revenue, you get to a point where you can really get some scale and some true lift and acceleration in the overall productivity and performance of your sales team by building out a more full marketing discipline. And, my generic rule of thumb is once companies have hit five salespeople, and are generating roughly on the order of $5 million in revenue, they're typically going to get scale advantages to that marketing team, to the sales team, out of a strong approach to marketing, and they're going to be generating enough revenue to where they can start to afford to invest in marketing some.
What is it about five salespeople, or $5 million that allows for marketing to be helpful?
Yeah, so the most typical path I've seen for smaller B2B companies is their first go-to-market efforts are entirely driven by the sales team, and that makes sense because you've got to go out and you've got to have heavy degrees of engagement directly with customers, start to build relationships and trust, and work through those, building that initial base of business. So that's almost always the go-to-market footprint that's out there first. And teams come to know and trust that. And you get into an operating mode where you understand what size of territory a salesperson can cover and how much revenue they can generate and what sort of quota they should have and what the condition of their pipeline should be. So that tends to be this, elemental building block for go-to-market in earlier stage B2B companies. And so if you assume that as a starting point, and then you start to bring more robust marketing into play, 5 salespeople tends to be the magic number because, most commonly you're looking at productivity lift on a per salesperson basis of around 20%. And this is a somewhat generic number, but it's my operating rule of thumb. And if you do that across a team of 5 salespeople, you've essentially taken them to the capacity of having 6 salespeople. You've now allowed 5 people to be as productive as 6. And then you just play that back into the dollars and cents and the cost to do the marketing that gives them that level of productivity, roughly equivalent to what it would have cost them to put another salesperson in the field. So that's when you start to hit some break-even rules of thumb against it. And then the great thing is that initial level of marketing investment continues to scale and add productivity growth when they move to 6 salespeople, 7 salespeople, eight, nine, and so forth. And so you can now provide that nice 20% boost in performance across those folks without as much investment. And then, you start to hit more inflection points as you move forward where you've got to invest more in marketing. You need more people. You need to put more dollars against activating your message. But then you find the right points in time to do that in the maturity of the organization.
So if I'm a B2B owner today and I've got 5 salespeople and I'm thinking about hiring that 6, you're saying marketing can help me achieve the output of 6 as long as I put that money into marketing. I've got to not put that money in my pocket, but actually invest it in the marketing to get that boost.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And once again, it's kind of rule of thumb, and so the situation for each business is going to be a little bit different. But that's most commonly what I've seen is if you take roughly the cost of that 6 salesperson, you invested in marketing, and you start to do some smart activation against a well thought out strategy, that you really get the lift of the 6th salesperson. And the nice thing is that improvement in productivity continues to scale as you add more folks to the sales team.
So I've made that decision. I'm gonna invest in marketing. Where do I start?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what I've found with my clients is the first things that they really need are some work on their core messaging, because they'll usually be in a situation where on their best day, the CEO or the best salesperson can just absolutely knock it out of the park with how they engage with a customer and what they say in that meeting, but you don't yet have that level of effectiveness and that level of consistency across everybody in the sales team. And so one of the ways that you drive toward that is you codify, you get down in writing what the core message is. And then you've now got a building block through which you can develop sales aids, you can develop a variety of marketing materials, you can improve the web presence. But it comes down to getting crisp on messaging that really brings to life your core value proposition, the problem you solve, or the opportunity that you make available to your target customers. And so that tends to be step one. The next thing against that comes a marketing strategy that makes sense relative to the core business strategy. And the two pieces need to be linked together really well. And so, organizations that have thought through, with a certain amount of detail, who is our target customer base, and which specific elements within that target customer base do we want to focus on the most, and can take stock of the level of awareness that those target customers have that you exist and where the stages in relationship are. Once you step back and you look at that, you've kind of got the building blocks that say, hey, we need a marketing strategy to complement our sales strategy that's heavily focused in this particular set of customers, where 30% of them are, aware that we exist, 70% are not. And inside of the 30% of them that are aware that we exist, we're doing business with 5% of them. And that really starts to, put some macro shape to the marketing strategy. And then, you step back and you say, well, where do these people congregate? Where do they go to pursue information to help them make better decisions? Does it tend to be, they concentrate in physical places like conferences and events? Do they concentrate in online places like certain discussion forums, or their groups within popular platforms like LinkedIn and Twitter that they're really tuned in on? Or are they paying attention to certain news sites? But as you start to understand where they go to pursue information, you've now got some more definition of where you should go and talk to them. So at that stage, if you've got message, if you've got a pretty tight understanding of target customer set, and you've got a pretty good understanding of where they go to consume information, you can enact a marketing strategy that helps you figure out how to say the right things to the right people at the right place at the right time. And that's kind of the core of the marketing strategy. And then from there, you're now in a position to turn the strategy into an execution plan. And this is okay, if the strategy tells us our high level goals, execution plan is what are the nuts and bolts of what we need to do? What are the mechanics of what we need to put in place? What actions do we need to take? What timetable will we do that on? What's the specific cost of these pieces? And then from there, from that execution plan, that then dovetails into getting started with the execution and typically hiring in a company's first junior marketing resource to go after the initial pieces of execution.
Great. You beat me to the punch on when you make that first hire. So you got to have the strategy before you put people behind it.
Yeah, that's really been that's been my thesis all along. It is that the best companies are the ones who get the most lift out of marketing are going to have thought through their core messaging and their strategy before they bring in a junior execution person to go and activate that strategy. Because otherwise, what ends up happening is you have a leadership team that maybe had some initial ideas of what should that junior person come in and do, but it's not necessarily against a broader marketing strategy, and they go and execute that first handful of things. But after that, it becomes a little bit of a random walk as to what they go do next. And they typically then don't have the guidance that they need to keep pushing forward and keep adding value for the company. So I think if you do strategy first, then you really position that first junior person for a lot of success in a pre-structured environment in which they can go do what the company needs for them to. And it also helps you understand when are you really in position to add that second person, the third person, so forth on down the line and flesh out additional competencies within marketing.
Now, you spent 15 years at Dell. I mean, that's one of the world's biggest marketers. What did you learn at a big company like that that applies to really small companies?
It was a real exciting transition for me out of Dell into creating Rollcast. And part of the reason that I did it was to help small companies learn from, benefit from some big company lessons. And I think, from as with any situation in life, you draw some lessons from that experience of exactly what you want to do, and then also some lessons on, hey, if you had it all to do over again, how might you do things differently? And for the lessons that apply from what big companies do for marketing that I think have direct applicability into smaller early stage companies, you get into you always want to know your customer. You want to honor your customer in the ways that you create message, you communicate with them. You want to speak in ways and places that really matter to them, and increasingly do it in a way that it's a two-way street. The days of one-way conversations or one-way marketing are long behind us, and it's really the efforts that you put against marketing should be to begin to form relationships with people, and relationships take two-way conversations, and so that matters a ton. And another thing that transcends is just that this matters whether you're giant or small but want to become giant, is that brand just matters so much. And brand is not what you say about yourself. Brand is what your customers would say about you when you're not around. And part of the way that you achieve that level of brand and that definition of brand is what you do through your marketing engine, but it's also what you do through your sales process, the nature of the products or services you provide, the support that you give to those, the overall value that you deliver to your customers. And I think that marketing in big companies or small can play a tremendous role in making sure that a company stays true to and honors the value proposition that customers expect from them. And so those are a lot of the things that I see mattering, whether a company's real big or real small. If you flip the coin and you look at the stuff that I learned in a bigger company that I would advise small companies to think about differently, it sort of says, hey, there's pieces of infrastructure in marketing. There's data, there's tool sets, there's process, there's the ways that you measure marketing that if you can start them out correctly, and by correctly, I mean not just supporting your operational model today, but move forward years down the road and say, what style of customer data are we going to need? What style of tools and process and measurement is going to be important to us, and design with that in mind from inception, then you'll save yourself a lot of headaches further down the road. But because what becomes really challenging as organizations get bigger and bigger, if you don't have the right data models in place, if you don't have the right tools, the right measurement techniques, the right process, pushing that into a larger organization, you're always displacing something else that was there before. You're trying to cobble together disparate systems that are already in place. That's just a lot harder. And so a lot of what I counsel companies on is get it started right from the beginning and make sure that what you're doing today is relevant to you, years down the road. The other thing that I really try to help companies do as we stand up the marketing discipline is from day one, make it a function that's really understood, believed in, and held accountable by key stakeholders in sales, in finance, because what can become really challenging if those relationships aren't intact and fully transparent and highly trusting is you get down the road and marketing's got to be accountable for results into the sales team, and then by extension it's got to be accountable for results into the CFO. But if you don't have believability in that, you don't have rigor around that, and you're not held to a high standard for accountability, ultimately what needs to exist is high functioning, high trust, high transparency relationships is just going to fall apart. And so that's really what I try to help younger organizations build from the start, is that infrastructure of data and tools and process, but also the critical, very human element of infrastructure of relationships and in trust and common language and in shared objectives between functions.
Picking up on your marketing accountability piece in particular, I mean, that's hugely important. And I think going back early in my career, I'm going to pick up on something else you said about brand. I tried to stay away from using the word brand in a B2B context. And it just seemed like every time I said that, I thought I was talking about fonts and colors and pretty pictures. But I've noticed over the last, say, 5 to 7 years, in particular, probably the last 5, there's been this huge shift of B2B companies thinking about, no, brand really does matter. And I'm wondering, I've got some thoughts on that, but I wonder, what do you think about that? Did you see the same thing? And what would you attribute that shift to?
Yeah, I think that my sense over that timeline, Alan, is while we shied away from calling it brand, and to a certain degree for the reasons that you talked about, as brand would always bring up these ideas of, hey, it's all about an aesthetic or a font choice or a logo or something like that. While we shied away from talking about brand, the essence of brand, the true essence of brand, still really mattered, which is what value proposition do we consistently deliver to our customers? And I don't mean say to our customers, I mean, what do we truly deliver to our customers? So then what is the real reputation that we have with them in their minds? Like, I think that's always been important. And then, over the last 5, 7, 10 years, that essence has been allowed to be called brand and have some resonance and have some currency in the B2B space. I think it's just been a little bit of a change in the term of art, and folks now understand that use of brand to be shorthand, not for aesthetic choices, but for what is our story with our customers, and do we truly live that story every day to the degree that that's the story they tell about us also. And that's, I think, become more and more powerful. And part of the reason it matters more now than ever, earlier in the conversation, I talked a lot about how you tend to have B2B organizations that are sales driven from go to market early in their existence. And I think that's classic, and I think it's got a lot of value, continues to have a lot of value. But the way that customers buy, whether it's in a consumer context or in a business context, is changing, and the role that a professional sales maker plays in that context is changing shape over time, because customers now, whether it's consumer or business oriented, want to do more self-education, more investigation upstream, and go self-direct and get themselves smart on a topic before they engage with an expert from a company called a salesperson. And so what that means is all of that information that the would-be customer will find out there about you, whether it's things you said about yourself or what the press has said or what their peers have said, and typically in social media and other forums, that matters a lot, and it really is influencing the path to success for a lot of companies. And I think that is allowed to be called brand, and I think that's elevated in people's minds.
So let's step back. I think I'm gonna start referring to this segment as couch and crystal ball. So if I step back and I think about Drew, you think about Drew, what fuels you? What's driving you and marketing and you as a person?
Yeah, I'm really heavily wired around a sense of inclusion, and like inclusion in a way that's rooted in fairness and people having access to the best things possible for them that matter to them, in a balanced transfer of value for them to get those things, and just good give and take in relationships to do it. And I realize that's a little bit, that's definitely some couch kind of stuff, some pie in the sky a little bit, if you will. But the reason that matters to me, and it matters in the context of marketing, and why I'm passionate about marketing, is marketing done well forms meaningful relationships between companies and the people who buy their stuff. And the meaningful relationships happen because the company is really, really good at delivering something that's really, really important to that customer. and the customer turns around and says, I am glad to have the opportunity to give you value in return because you've done something that's so meaningful and important for me, and you've done it so well that it's more than worth my dollars that I'm now going to turn around and hand to you. And that's this, that comes from the sense of inclusion, the sense of fairness, the sense of access to things that are valuable, and really connecting those nodes between supply and demand, and truly making those things happen in an efficient way where people step back at the end of the day and go, man, I'm glad it went down like that, because that's my day is a whole lot better because I bought that thing, or my day is a whole lot better because I sold that thing, and I'm coming away with a smile on my face.
I love that. Love that. So what brands or companies do you follow or you think others should follow?
It's I'd say for me, and what I would kind of advise your listeners on is it's less about the specific brands or companies that I follow, and perhaps more about a perspective I have on what good looks like, and then maybe people can kind of play that out to their world and find the companies that are in their world tend to follow these characteristics. I think we all hear a ton about big data, and we know that marketing is increasingly driven on algorithm, and with increasing doses of automation, which can all be a great thing if companies put it to use against a philosophy of what can I do for my customers rather than what can I do to my customers. And it's a subtle difference, but it's really, really important, because the brands that do it for their customers rather than to their customers make two things happen. One is, the for their customers goes back and it serves this interest I have around connecting people who need stuff with people who are selling that stuff. And that feels pretty good. The other aspect of it is the big data thing, the algorithmically driven marketing thing, only works and continues to get better and better when would-be customers offer up more data about themselves, want to share more data about themselves, because a company is so good at using that data to their benefit and fine-tuning the offerings that they have and the way that they approach that customer based on the more that they know about them. And so, one company to look at, for instance, is Pandora. Passionate users of Pandora are happy to surrender more and more information about themselves to Pandora because the playlists get better and better. And so that's an example of where, hey, it adds a lot of value. You've connected somebody who really wants something with somebody who has something in a way where somebody says, I want to tell you more and more about myself all the time because every time I do, the offering gets better and better. That's like a high potential to thrive business model, particularly from a marketing perspective where a lot of data is required. And the other thing is, if you just step back from it, it's this, on the one hand, that can feel like the future of marketing. On the other hand, it's as old as time. I mean, it's the fundamental essence of human relationships. You tend to have good relationships with people who've got your best interest at heart. And the more you open up and share to them, the more and more value and benefit and friendship and trust and support they can provide back to you. It's at the core of every one of the relationships in our lives that really matters to us. And so, as a company, as a brand, we want to figure out, like, how do I, in an authentic way, serve that model, with my customer? How do I make it so that they're really, really glad they did business with me, and increasingly glad that they shared information with me, because every time they do it, I give them something better than they thought was possible.
You just talked about one thing you thought good companies are going to be tilting towards in the future. Is there anything else you'd predict for the future of marketing?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes along on the same themes. I think that the inescapable things that are in front of us for the near to medium term future is marketing is going to be more and more data driven. It's going to be more and more digital. But that's really just kind of from a tools perspective. I think from a philosophical perspective, it's got to be increasingly integrated into the natural way that people want to engage with the company, which that's through the customer's eyes. What's the natural way they want to engage with the company? If we flip it around and look at it from company's eyes, that means you need to have seamless integration between a sales and marketing process, the nature of the product or service that you actually deliver, the way that you support it, and that the way that you expose yourself to be bought again or expanded upon. And so it's a sense of integration across all these functions. So digital and data driven is not just against the marketing envelope; it's against the full level of interaction with the customer. And the other thing is, it kind of goes back to the sense of what are you going to do for your customer rather than what are you going to do to your customer. I think marketing is just going to become increasingly helpful. And the companies that pursue marketing well, they are going to understand how to earn trust with their customers, and they're going to honor that and truly be trusted because they're going to be helpful above and beyond.
I, I like that a lot. That marketing is going to become helpful. There's a lot of people out in the world that may disagree with that, but I'm hopeful as a marketer, just like you, that marketing does become helpful. Um,
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
got one last question for you. You're based in Austin, Texas, and I've always wondered, what does it mean to keep Austin weird?
Yeah, Alan, that's funny. You should ask about keeping Austin weird. There's sort of there's the origin story on it, and then there's the how does it get interpreted every day around town. And the point of origin on it is that it came from a lot of small local business owners, folks who had retail shops and restaurants and stuff, and it really started to happen in the 80s and 90s as Austin was accelerating population really fast. Back then it was 250,000, and we've now gotten to the point a little over 2 million. And as more and more national chains came in, local merchants were kind of banding together and really wanted to have a keep it local initiative going that was sort of true to the spirit of Austin. So that was the origin of the whole keep it weird thing. In terms of how it gets interpreted, I mean, sky's the limit. Everybody's got their own interpretation, and people do interpret it pretty liberally. So it shows up in the way that folks think and communicate and dress and act and the style of businesses that are around town. But it's I think it produces or I should say, it reflects a great vibe overall, where we can simultaneously take things that are important to us seriously without taking ourselves too seriously in the process. Is sort of how myself and my family interpret it, and it's part of what makes Austin a great place for us.
We'll keep Austin weird for me. Really appreciate you joining the show today. I know the listeners are going to get a lot of value out of the conversation.
Super. I really appreciate the chance to catch up with you, and it was thought provoking to spend the time talking through this stuff with you, Alan. So thanks for the opportunity, and definitely take care.